Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'll be going into greater detail about the Assassination talents that I prefer to use when I'm playing 3v3 Arena. Also, please note that when I do 1v1 or 2v2 as double DPS, I have another spec that I prefer to use instead of this one, but I'll make another video for that in the future. Currently, these are my favorite talents to run as Assassination in 3v3. The pros of this spec is that it has high sustain damage, good multi-target pressure, and is a bleed-based spec, which means that armor doesn't affect it as much. The con is that it doesn't have Mark for Death, so it takes a little longer to set up first. For our first row talent, we'll be going with Hemorrhage. Any bleed-based spec you play for Assassination should have Hemorrhage, as it applies a debuff that increases bleed damage taken from your target by 25% for 20 seconds. It should also be noted, though, that Hemorrhage should not be used for building combo points if you can avoid it, as the damage to energy ratio compared to Mutilate is much lower. Overall, Hemorrhage is just the best option in this row, as elaborate planning is only really good for burst openers when paired with Marked for Death, and Master Poisoner is currently just a little bit too undertuned to matter. If Master Poisoner was tweaked just a little bit so that the increase in non-damaging effect was actually an increase by 20% as opposed to an increase of 20% of the current effect, then it'd be much more useful. It would make something like Wound Poison up to 45% healing reduction, and it would give rogues back their 70% crippling poison, which would be pretty good utility and a nice trade-off from Hemorrhage or elaborate planning. Because in its current state, it only boosts crippling poison to 60%, and it boosts wound poison to about 30% from 25%, which isn't a very good trade-off considering how much less damage you gain from this talent. For our second row talent, we'll be going with Subterfuge, as it allows us to use stealth abilities for 3 seconds after stealth breaks, and it also gives us a nice damage increase to Garrote when used from stealth. It's also good to note that since Assassination doesn't have blind anymore, Subterfuge is really good as it provides peels when coupled with Vanish, which is what we definitely need, as outside of Kidney Shot, that's all we really have. Nothing can compete with Subterfuge in this row, as Night Stalker is only really useful when paired with Vanish and used for damage purposes, in which case we don't get any openers, which is a lot less control, and Shadow Focus was only really useful when we had 2 Vanishes and we could pair them up with Shadow Reflection to cause some nasty burst combinations. For our tier 3 talent, we'll be going with Deeper Stratagem. It allows us to have up to a maximum of 6 combo points, as well as spend 6 combo points, which allows us to have some pretty massive ruptures. In addition to that, it also increases our finishing move damage by 10%. While Vigor does increase our maximum energy by 50 and our energy regeneration by 10%, it is overall not better than Deeper Stratagem, as it provides more damage overall, and as the game gets going in 3v3 and we have bleeds on multiple targets, we'll have plenty of energy thanks to Venomous Wounds. As it currently stands, Anticipation is just a little undertuned and doesn't synergize very well with Assassination, so overall we'll just skip this talent. For our tier 4 talent, the only talent you should consider in 3v3 is Elusiveness, as it allows our Feint to provide a 30% damage reduction on 0 cooldown, which provides a very high survivability increase as opposed to the other 2 options in this row. While Leeching Poison is decent for leveling, it should never be considered for PvP, as if you were to kill somebody from 100% health to 0, it would only heal you for about 10% of your health. In addition to that, Cheat Death is also not useful right now, as it's just a little bit too undertuned, and sometimes it'll proc and you'll just die anyway, which is no good, so overall, just stick with Elusiveness. For our tier 5 talent option, I go with Internal Bleeding. While I used to think it was pretty close between Prey on the Weak and Internal Bleeding, ever since Internal Bleeding is now affected by Venomous Wounds, I feel like the increased energy regen is just way too good to pass up. Although if you are running a comp in 3v3 that's more burst oriented, Prey on the Weak should still be considered, as it's a very strong option and can help you get those kills in those quick situations. And overall, Thuggy is not very useful. It could see some use in Battlegrounds, and it's good for leveling, but in 3v3, don't take it ever. Moving on to our tier 6 talents, the only option you should consider in tier 6 is Exsanguinate, as it allows us to have our bleed effects bleed out 100% faster when used and can create some nice burst. Currently, both of the other options are way too undertuned for PvP and should not be considered. Even Agonizing Poison, when coupled with Master Poisoner, still is far inferior to the other options. Finally, for our tier 7 talent, I'll be going with Venom Rush, as it allows Venomous Wounds to grant 3 additional energy each time it grants energy, which is an increase from 7 to 10, or an increase of about 43%. In 3v3, if you're able to maintain about 4 bleeds on a target, the increase from 28 energy every tick of those bleeds to 40 is actually pretty crazy. Every 2 seconds you're gaining an extra 12 energy, which really adds up very quickly. and can allow you to snowball super hard and put out a ton of spread pressure. While I believe Mark for Death to be a very strong option as well, I feel like it's less required in 3v3 and you can fully take advantage of the increased pressure given by Venom Rush. Also, in addition to that, Death from Above is currently too weak to consider as Assassination, as Envenom isn't a whole lot of our damage. If it got tweaked a little bit, or if Envenom got some buffs, then it could definitely be useful, but as of right now, you're better off to go with Mark for Death, or in this case, Venom Rush. Alright, moving on to Honor Talents. In the first row, I believe that Gladiator's Medallion is the only option, as the on-demand escape for rogues is just too important. Adaptation, while it looks good, is highly abusable by your opponent and should not be picked, and Relentlessness makes us trade our Medallion for a reduction in 25% of crowd control effects, and I believe it's just not worth it. For Tier 2, my default talent option is Reinforced Armor, as a passive increase to health by 10% provides a nice damage reduction against all kinds of damage. If you're against something that's more physical oriented, then Sparring should also be considered, as it's really good at damage reduction versus physical. But overall, I just pick Reinforced Armor most of the time, as it scales really well with things like Crimson Vial. My current default choice for Tier 3 talent is Cut to the Chase. If nearby enemies within 10 yards move faster than you at any given time, you match their speed and exceed by 5% for 3 seconds. This talent is actually ridiculous. I would say that Intent to Kill and Maneuverability could have some use while tunneling down a target, but currently I believe Cut to the Chase is just too strong and should be used in almost every situation. Personally, I do like Maneuverability a lot, but for now I just go with Cut to the Chase. For Tier 4 Honor Talents, I prefer to use Honor Among Thieves, as the increase in combo points is really useful for maintaining multiple ruptures in a game and can really help maintain your spread pressure. While up until recently I did use Unfair Advantage over Honor Among Thieves, after learning that Honor Among Thieves can be procced by yourself, I now feel it's the stronger option. Also good to note that if you have a teammate that is providing the Mortal Strike debuff, then you can also go with Mind Numbing Poison, which is a decent damage increase, or you can go with Shiv, which is really useful against some classes such as Discipline Priest that rely on spamming a same ability over and over again, like Smite or Shadow Mend. While Shiv does seem like a situationally strong ability, learning when to use Shiv can be very difficult as it requires you to have knowledge of other classes and might not be suitable for newer rogues, so overall I would probably stick with using either Mind Numbing Poison or Deadly Brew if you need that wound poison healing reduction. For the final row of Honor Talents, I prefer to use Creeping Venom when I'm playing a spread pressure build, as your Envenom applies a dot which deals damage over 6 seconds, and its duration is refreshed when the target moves. The interesting thing about Creeping Venom is that it can provide a decent utility in the manner that they have to stand still in order for the dot to fall off. If they don't stand still, the damage is going to rack up like crazy and provide a lot extra pressure over the duration of a game. Another thing to note is that Creeping Venom can be applied with any point in Venom. It can be a 1 point in Venom or a 2 point or anything, compared to its alternative System Shock, which requires you to use Envenom with at least 5 combo points on a target. However, if you're playing a more burst-oriented setup, you may want to consider System Shock as well, as it provides a nice burst damage increase, and after using Envenom reduces their movement speed by 90% for 4 seconds, which can be pretty useful as well. Overall, you should avoid Flying Daggers, as Phantom Knives isn't that useful in PvP. I use it once in a while to maintain Deadly Poison on multiple targets when everyone's grouped, but still, the damage increase is not worth this talent. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully this video has been helpful, and if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more if you enjoyed. Well, we'll see you all in the upcoming Legion expansion. Good luck.